A lot of you might not want to hear this unless you're a Barca fan, but I don't think this club is going anywhere this season in regards to the conversations of the best clubs in the world. Let's not beat around the bush here. Barcelona, I feel like, is just one of those clubs that so many people hate for one reason or another. I'm sure if you walk into any football discourse space, you will find at least one person that has a disdain for Barca. And by all means, be in your hater bag. I'm not telling anyone to not be a hater. But for those who were hoping to go into this season and witness a fall off from Barca, I don't really see that happening if I'm being honest. Clearly, I'm no fortune teller, but there's just something in my gut that's telling me that this squad was not just some one season wonder. Since they found that incredible form under Hansi Flick, they've pretty much just been on an upward trajectory and have armed themselves with a squad that generally is going to be able to grow and continue getting better. In my opinion, there's a lot to look forward to as a Barcelona fan thanks to Launchpad due to the foundation that was laid last season. And no team is perfect, so I'm sure there's bound to be hiccups for this Barcelona side here and there, and I'm going to get into that in just a second. But generally, this Barcelona side is probably just going to cook again. And a massive reason for my thought process being how they finished off their last handful of games last season. After that semi-final exit in the Champions League in dramatic fashion, it ended up feeling like there was a lot of question marks surrounding this Barcelona side. Was their highline just too risky against the best of the best? Should Flick have changed up the system to adapt to the game instead of sticking to his guns? Was this team beginning to become too fatigued with the system that was in front of them? Pretty much all questions that came about after that semi-final exit, but Barcelona in their last 4 games of the season would just shut everyone up. After losing to Inter Milan, they would host Real Madrid in a match that was vital to Barcelona being able to win the league. And what resulted would be a match that gave Mbappe PTSD back to the 2022 World Cup final, as he would put up a hat-trick that would go to waste, as goals from Eric Garcia, Lamine Yamal, and Rafinha would be enough to get Barcelona over the line and see them win 4-3.
Yo, come on, man. I can't have shit in this house!
After just going meat for meat with Inter Milan, this Barcelona side was sticking to their script, and in another shootout game, they would get their 4th straight victory against Real Madrid in a single season. And then following that match, they would face their Catalonian rivals Espanyol, and a 2-0 victory would be enough for Barcelona to secure La Liga and a domestic double in the process. The remaining 2 filler games of the season would see a hungover loss and a thumping win over Athletic Bilbao on the final match day. The fact that they didn't allow for that semi-final exit to shake up things in the remaining schedule in La Liga was all the evidence I needed to see how these guys will continue to get better. I can't help but feel like so many other teams across the world would have lost that semi-final match, gone into that next game against their bitter rival that's right behind them in the league, and just crumbled and then let that derail the rest of the season. But these guys stuck to their system and pretty much just saw out the rest of the league with no problems. And what did also kind of help Barcelona's perception around that time was the fact that in the Champions League final, Inter Milan would get drilled, which meant that a lot of people ran with the narrative that Barcelona should have been in the semi-final instead. But alas, Barca now needed to get ready for this current season, where they now had the task of defending their La Liga title as well as returning to the Champions League final for the first time since they last won it. This summer period had to be a busy and important one for Barcelona, and because of this, the club would of course have a lot of attention put towards it because there was rumors here and there of who they were planning on bringing in and selling out. And another reason specifically why Barcelona would have a lot of eyes on them earlier in the summer was because of Lamine Yamal. Since his breakout, he has quickly become arguably Barcelona's best player. Last season specifically, what he was doing on a football pitch every week realistically forced the football world to acknowledge that this kid was no longer just some star for the future. We were witnessing one of the best players in the world right now. There's always been a lot of criticism that follows Yamal around. Like I said, he clearly has the ability to go head to head against the best in the world, but many will point to his ego and the way he acts off the pitch as reasons to either not like him or to believe he'll fall off soon. Surely it doesn't help that he's black and playing for Spain, but nonetheless, at just the age of 18, his list of haters is endless. And Yamal this summer brought a lot of attention to Barcelona because he would turn 18 years old. And to celebrate the occasion, Yamal would have a birthday party that the Spanish government is looking to investigate. Like I said, people are already saying that Yamal is going down the Neymar path in terms of his career, as it appears that he's one to indulge in the lifestyle that comes with being a young, rich athlete at the top of their game. So when he goes on to have a gangster-themed birthday party with all his Barcelona teammates that went on for hours with beverages, a no phone policies, and reports of dwarfism due to the hiring of said individuals as entertainment, you can see how much bad press would follow. I'm telling you, rich people are something else. We cannot fathom what goes on in their heads. The list of Yamal haters would only grow going into the season, which at least from a footballing perspective would amp up the pressure a ton. I will say one good thing that came out of this entire debacle was the third choice goalkeeper. I like those. So with their star player recreating Project X for all his teammates, Barcelona still needed to dip their toes into the the transfer market to make sure they weren't going into the season with gaps in the squad. Since Barca is going through some financial issues, their pockets still aren't super deep, but they will still manage to get a few pickups to help the squad. Joan Garcia will join from the previously mentioned Espanyol for 25 million euros. Garcia, who was one of the best keepers in La Liga last season, is coming in to finally replace the liability that has been Ter Stegen over the last few years. Additionally, a somewhat long-term target, Marcus Rashford, will join the club on a loan until the end of the season. Rashford, despite not being the player that we know he could be over the last handful of years, will still provide great depth across the front line. Now, Barca did also sign wonder kid Winnie Bardghji from Copenhagen for 2.5 million euros, but time will tell with him. Those were really the main incomings into the squad, and there were a handful of outgoings as well, but the most important player that would lead the club for the season would be Inigo Martinez, making the jump to Saudi Arabia. Inigo's veteran presence in Barcelona's back line last season was crucial to the success of the system. His high IQ and ability to marshal the back line helped Cubarsí so much when it came to being able to read the game and stay disciplined. He's also just a good defender fundamentally, and because Araujo hasn't been the same since he returned from injury, it will feel like there is a gap in that back line. Cubarsí over the season will probably end up missing his partner in crime. Nonetheless, as of this recording, those are all the relevant transfers in and out of Barcelona, which now takes us to how they started off this current La Liga season. Bola Blaugrana would get their season started off by traveling to Mallorca. The club would have to get their season started without their talisman, as Lewandowski at this point was still waiting to fully recover from his injury. But not having Loa for this match specifically wasn't the biggest deal, as Barca would pretty much just spank Mallorca. At just the 7th minute, Lamine Yamal would hit one of his trademark moves of cutting in and floating across to the back post, where Rafinha would tap it in to make it 1-0. After that, at the 22nd minute, the ref would controversially not stop the match despite Mallorca captain Rayo taking a cannon to the head that would leave him on the floor. The Barca players would pretend they didn't see anything, and Ferran Torres would then place it at the top left corner. To make things worse for Mallorca, they then received 2 red cards within 7 minutes of each other to see off the first half. From here, Barca would essentially just toy around with their food, and Yamal would hit us with his second trademark move of cutting in and smashing it in to finish off the game 3-0. Mallorca did seemingly catch Barca slipping a couple of times early in the match, but by the time it was 2-0 and the red cards had come, it was pretty much over. The following match week, Barcelona would once again be on the road, this time traveling to the city of Valencia to face off against Levante. Barca would once again be without Lewandowski this match, would continue to go with Eric Garcia and Araujo in their back line, and they gave Rashford his first league start. Levante was coming off a 2-1 loss against Alaves, so for Barca, they assumed this game would be light work. But Levante gave Barca a swift punch in the mouth at the 14th minute, as some poor transitional defending allowed Levante to get the ball in the box, where striker Ivan Romero took Cubarsí's ankles and made it 1-0. Things would only get worse, as once again Levante would see themselves through on goal as a result of a counterattack. Balde would do well enough to get back and somewhat stop the counter so his teammates could arrive. That was until he gave up a handball, and Levante won a penalty to make it 2-0. Away from home, down 2-0 at Levante. How is Barcelona gonna get out of it? Well, first off, Rashford would come off for Olmo, and Casado would come off for Gavi. Then at the 49th minute, Pedri reminded us why he's one of the best midfielders in the world and blasted a rocket to bring one back. Just a few minutes later, Ferran Torres managed to find himself in some space during a corner where Rafinha would perfectly find him, and all of a sudden it was all level. Barca continued to dig, and at the 91st minute, a Lamine Yamal cross that was already going on target would skip off El Ghazabal's head, and Barca managed to get out with the win. They did have to suffer for the win, but this match would continue to show the brilliant levels of Pedri, Lamine Yamal, and Rafinha. Notably, in these two matches, we did also see some great performances from Joan Garcia. Again, having to deal with the liability that is Ter Stegen over these last handful of years, Barcelona needed to have a keeper that they felt was reliable, and they finally got that way on Garcia. And lastly, the most recent match we have seen from Barca was their recent trip to Rayo Vallecano. The match that would see VAR stop working for the majority of the match has probably been the most contentious for Barca. A rotated center-back partnership of Eric Garcia and Christensen looked incredibly shaky in the back and truthfully allowed Rayo so much space both in transition and whenever they had the ball. If we're being real, if it wasn't for Joan Garcia, this match could have gotten ugly for Barca. But also notably, we would see an incredible performance from Lamine Yamal again. At the 37th minute, we would see why Barca gave him the number 10, as he got past multiple defenders and won a penalty in the process to make it 1-0. Rayo would then turn up the pressure going into the second half and managed to keep on breaking past Barcelona's lines. At the 66th minute, some really poor set-piece defending would allow Fran Perez to be wide open on the corner where they would get their equalizer. The game would end up 1-1, all, but really Barcelona would be lucky to escape with a draw. The midfield and backline in this match would find themselves overrun, which gave Rayo so many chances. Like I said, if it wasn't for Joan Garcia in this game, it would have been an early shock to the season. But I guess that's what keepers are for, right? They brought him in for a reason, and he earned them a point in this match. But nonetheless, Barca now finds himself opening up the season with 2 wins and a draw. You would assume Barcelona to go 3-0 in their first 3 matches, but this is still a good record to start off the season. Which now begs the question, what are the keys for Barcelona to stay good and to stay competitive throughout the season? Well, firstly, I do think it's very important for Lewandowski to get back into the side as soon as possible. Once he does get back in there, it's going to allow Barcelona to really start punishing these teams that are giving them so much space and so many shots on goal. And if Rashford can give firing for that front line, pairing him and mixing and matching between him, Rafinha, Yamal, and Lewandowski could prove to be very, very good. Secondly, Barcelona needs to continue to give Yamal the freedom to kill his opponents. Yamal has already been great this season. If he can maintain that, there won't be many teams that can stop him. Like I said, since last season, he's arguably been the best player in the world. And that's without even scoring a crazy amount of goals. If he adds finishing to his bag this season, we're going to see a different level from this kid, I'm telling you. And what's also very important for Barcelona this season is that they need to figure that back line out. The loss of Inigo Martinez is very tough, and the transfer window is closed, so Hansi Flick needs to figure out which of Araujo, Christensen, or Eric Garcia are going to be the best partner for Cubarsí. Cubarsí and that back line has generally looked a little bit lost this season since that veteran presence is gone. In the grand scheme of things, it's probably the biggest problem for them this season, since you still have Pedri in the midfield, you still have that great attack. It's just that back line that might need some tweaking, and they need to figure out internally, because like I said, they can't make any transfers at this point. But I think what's really good for Barcelona is that they have the next handful of games to really prepare for that brunt of the season. No opponent in football is easy, and anything could happen in any match of football. But if we're being honest, these next few games could be key for Barcelona to really get things clicking before that PSG match. On paper, the game against Newcastle is a big one as well, but realistically, Newcastle hasn't been very good. It's also the first Champions League game of the season, so if they do lose, it's not really the biggest deal in the world. And if they take this time, they get ready, and then they go on to beat PSG, then they can really shape up for that really good season. I think it's gonna happen, but of course, time will tell.